Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us. See some friendly faces. I think we know everyone in this room, which is great. Woo! We're live. Good. Thank you for joining us here this afternoon here at NAB New York. My name is Brendan Noone. I'm with Amazon Web Services. I've been focused on media, entertainment, communications at AWS now for the past decade, and I've had the pleasure to work with David from A&E, David Klee for M&E now for the last 5 years. We actually had the chance 2 years ago at AWS reInvent to do this together and present together, and we thought it would be great to look at 2 years later, look at the progress that A&E's made with AWS and some of our key partners that are here in the room. So, David.
Yeah, thank you so much. Excited to do this again and excited to get a chance to talk a little bit about some very exciting projects that we've been putting together at A&E lately. So I am David Klee. I'm responsible for broadcast operations and media engineering at A&E. And we have recently completed a big edit in the cloud project with the assistance of many people here in the room. Is it okay to ask those of you who contributed to this project to please raise your hands and
thank you.
Say hello? Thank you. Thank you. Little audience participation doesn't hurt. Really appreciate it. It's been a big team effort. I'm very excited to tell you a little bit about it. Maybe I start a little about A&E?
Yeah, I will say that, we worked together for the last 5 years, and you've been one of the pioneers of moving to the cloud, broadcast, media supply chain. So I think giving this group an understanding of that journey that you've been through and what you've done in the last couple of years since we sat down together in publicly, we'd love to hear it. So what's happening with A&E now?
Yeah, sounds good. As A&E is all the stuff on the slide, A&E's made a big push lately in the last 5 years to become a true multi-platform content company. That's something that started about 5 years ago. Traditionally, you might have thought of what we has done and focused on as that center section there, the cable channels. But over the last 5 years, it's really exploded. Many of the things on this slide didn't exist, or certainly didn't exist at the scale they do now when we started our cloud transformation journey 5 years ago. We really, back then, we knew we had some things we wanted to do to prepare for that multi-platform future to give us more capabilities. And we focused on these three key principles as we start talking about our supply chain replatforming and transformation in the cloud. First, we want to be agile. New thing comes up, we want to be able to do it. We want to be able to do it quickly if it makes sense for us as a company to do. Second, elasticity. Everybody was really tired of waiting in a queue, waiting for their stuff to process, watching paint dry. Not the most fun thing to do. We wanted to get rid of that problem. And efficiency. We knew we were going to be asked to do more with less or more with same. It was a theme already that all these new multi-platform deals were going to require a lot more processing power and a lot more processing time. And we needed to figure out a way to find that efficiency, to find that time in the process. What we did back then is we started thinking about what we do in media processing as a supply chain, leaning on those manufacturing principles, thinking about how things in manufacturing start with raw materials on one end, how processes get applied to them that increase their value, and then as they do that, you get a finished good coming out the other end that people are ready to consume or use or buy. And we started thinking about our supply chain that way in three basic phases: that in, during, and out sort of became our regular mantra. We had content coming in and getting quality checked. We had during, where we make and edit many different versions of each piece of content that we need for distribution. And then the out, where we actually package up and deliver all these different pieces of content to all these different endpoints.
I'm curious. Tell me a little bit about the teams that you set up around this. Did you have like a center of excellence that you built? And then how did you communicate with the different parts of the business about this change?
Yeah, it's a really good point. As we got started with the entire transformation journey, we knew we needed some really high-level buy-in. We knew we needed everybody in the organization to be on board. And it aligned very well with that idea that the company strategy was not at the time to make our own plus. Like the joke is the plus stays in the middle for A&E, because we don't have our own major streaming platform where we're trying to keep our content and not license it out. So early on, that was the strategy from the executive level. that we were going to work with many different people in many different platforms and anything that made sense for us and really expand our distribution footprint. So my boss, Don, and I at the time started going up to the CFO and the CEO and started to make the case that if that was the strategy, we needed a supply chain, we needed operations, we needed a transformation of how we worked with the media to support that.
And curious, any challenges that you came across during the last couple of years of this project, or is this all smooth sailing?
It's never all smooth sailing. Always challenges. So yeah, let's talk about the edit project in general. Maybe I'll back up for just a second. So these 3 phases, in, during, and out. We started with a lot of getting content in, made a major investment in replatforming our library, getting old shows brought up to modern standards for things like audio and captioning. And then we did some distribution work. We realized we could do some large-scale distribution, sending content around to lots of different places. But we realized then we really needed to tackle that middle of the chain, and so that's where we started this new Edit in the Cloud project to figure out the right way to make that edit part of the chain, the during part of the chain, as efficient as we could make it. And as we did that project, we were really focusing on these things. We wanted to make sure we were simplifying the processes that we had, making them easier, taking out steps that didn't add value, making them easier to change. We wanted to visualize things for people. So a lot of questions during a supply chain process of, is my thing here, and is it being worked on, and is it going to make it where it needs to go on time? We really wanted to give people more coherent updates so they can understand that. And then empowering people to get the information they need, to make the decisions they need. You don't have to call somebody up to ask if something's here. You can go look in a system and get it. You don't have to ask somebody to go make that update for you. The system will make it relatively easy to see what the problem is and try to address the problem. So going into it, we knew that those were the things we wanted to focus on. And some of them I think we did pretty well, and some of them I think we are always going to be looking to improve, and we're still looking to improve today. So we ended up building with these 3 key partners. SDVI Rally is our main orchestration platform. That's the workflow engine that helps make things go. Polaris is our main operations management system interface. That's the system that people look at every day to see where their stuff is, to initiate jobs, to understand how things are moving through the system, really working to make it that single pane of glass where we can understand the chain. And then Arch Platform Technologies, a lesser known vendor, but they do a great job putting together virtual edit machines in the cloud, virtual environments in the cloud that are very scalable. So we started with, I think, 15 or 20 edit machines, and I think we've already scaled up to about 60. Very easy to scale and change and grow. And so this is how the architecture came together at a very high level. We got starts with your androgynous human at computer, which I believe is the name of the technical name for that icon there at the right-hand side of the screen. That person working at home or working in an office logs into an Arch platform web interface. It tells them what machine is available. They click it, they log into that machine. When they're in the machine, they're using Adobe Premiere with stuff installed for them and a panel that talks back to the supply chain to help make sure everybody knows what they need to do. People then go into this OMS platform. We call it OMS. It's the Polaris system from TMT. That is where people initiate their jobs, see the progress, if their edit is ready for them to work on or not. Other people can see if it's in progress or moving along or not. And then SDVI Rally is really the thing that ties it all together and is that orchestration platform. So we certainly learned a lot. You asked, how was it? And it was good. It was good. It was a lot. It was a lot to put this architecture together in a relatively short period of time. I think the core build of the supply chain was done in about 6 months. And in that time, we built out, this is a kind of a sampling of the key workflows we needed to build. There were about 20 different new workflows we needed to build in order to enable that ecosystem to work. And then you add into that, we were creating a whole new department of people to make this editing process happen. This had been outsourced, so a whole new department of people was getting spun up. with entirely new processes, with entirely new tools, using entirely new software that we were just building as it was coming out. So there were bugs, there were challenges, there was a lot to work on to get over the finish line. But to the operations team's credit, who is here today, or some of them are, great partners that really helped make sure we got over the finish line and got where we needed to. But I don't think you can underestimate the change management side of all this. It's a lot of change in a very short period of time to launch all of this effectively.
What were some of the positive outcomes, surprising outcomes that may have happened? And you talked about some of the design as well as the architecture, but what was the business value that you saw as well now that this project is out there and being implemented and used in the team and the organization?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things we could talk about. Like on the editing side of the equation, there are all these new workflows, and they work now, and so people can use them to get their work done more effectively. We really thought about how we wanted to change these workflows as we made this project happen, and did not want to just take exactly what was happening on the ground and move it into the cloud in roughly the same way. We really picked apart those processes and looked at, does this step need to be done or not? Is this effective or not? Why does the editor have to sit and wait for this to happen? Could this be automated? So a lot of these workflows have a high level of automation. Like in our best case scenarios, some of these workflows we were able to take and remove roughly 80 or 90% of the human touch points for that workflow from end to end. So that's a big win for people's daily jobs to be able to eliminate 80 or 90% of the clicks or things they have to do and wait for. And we're also able to eliminate a lot of waiting time. So we had some older systems in the mix and a lot of extra transfers going on, centralizing it all in AWS, centralizing it all in the cloud. We're able to bring the processing to the media more, so we don't have to send that piece of content down to this random system in this random office to make this random file to prepare it for an editor. Instead, everything lives in the cloud, lives in a particular S3 bucket. The processes run right there. Everything is much more efficient. So again, best cases for some of those things, we would have new ingests and we'd wait 8 to 10 hours to get the thing ready for an editor to pick up. And in that case, you're sort of, as an editor, waiting for the next day, and it's probably not something you're going to do today, or you got to make some special situation to handle it late at night. But in our most ideal cases, we've gotten it down to about 8 to 10 minutes for some of those workflows. So that's just a huge shift from having to plan a day ahead to now I can sort of put in my work orders in the morning and be ready to get going. But I think there are a lot of other business values that we've seen out of this. Like we saw the ingest and the output stuff earlier on. Now go back to this slide. Overall, what we're really trying to do is get the volume of our supply chain higher, right? The throughput capacity larger, because we want to do more with what we have. We want to make sure we're able to fulfill the next deal, to be more agile, to be able to be wherever our content needs to be. Right. So early on, when we met back at reInvent in 2022, I showed a version of this slide, and those spikes in the middle were the big ones, and we were there, right? And so that was, at the time, we were like, oh my gosh, look at those big spikes. Like early on, people realized this is our distribution volume grouped by month, number of assets per month. So early on, we realized we could spike up and spike down and do a lot of volume very quickly. And we had those couple really big months there you see at the early 2022. But then now you look at the end of the chart, after we've done the editing project, after we've been able to kind of bring the whole supply chain together under one umbrella, all in AWS, all in the cloud, now those earlier spikes are just sort of business as usual. That's like a normal month of distribution for us. And you see the next round of spikes starting to come up at the top of that chart. And I have no doubt we're going to see even more as we grow. If we did this again a couple of years later,
let's do it.
We're great. I think we're going to see another chart with that tall spike now is business as usual, and more stuff will be coming after that. And the capacity that you get from putting things in the cloud and applying this level of automation is so much more than we could have imagined had we kept them all on-prem in the old systems the way they were.
I'm always curious, how do you share this type of information with your leadership team? Is this, when you see those spikes going in that way, does that alarm them? Or are they like, okay, this is fine, this is working the way you promised it was going to back in 2021?
Yeah.
22? Like, how do you keep them up to speed on what's happening?
Yeah, we still have a regular meeting with key leaders. We still like to bring people up to speed and make sure everybody's aware of the initiative and how things are moving. We also have a lot more leadership across the organization now involved in this, since originally we were just talking about the cloud as sort of this like existential thing that we would all start using someday, and we didn't really know what that meant. As we've onboarded each team, acquisitions, quality control, as we've moved into editing now and then distribution, each different operations team has come along for that ride with their leadership. Each different business team has then been involved and heard a little bit about what's going on. And the spikes are really what we want, because the spikes mean we've made a big deal. The spikes mean that somebody in sales has made a fantastic opportunity for an A&E content to go somewhere to a new platform at a large volume. So I think in general, people look at the spikes as good things and happy that we can handle those spikes. And sometimes I think the question is, could you just handle much larger spikes more often and just that's great. Let's do more and more and more. And we are working to always do more.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about what's coming up next for A&E and what's kind of what you've done this project. You've been a part of this project, like you said, for 5 years. What's the next phase of this, or are there other projects that you're looking around the corner that you want to get started that you might want to share with the team?
Yeah, definitely. No, that's not. Yeah, we've got a lot coming up. I'll leave this slide up for now. I have takeaways at the end, and so we'll get to that in a moment. We have a lot coming up. I think the last 5 years, like you say, there's been a big push to make this new supply chain and make it in the cloud and make it efficient. We basically re-platformed everything, not by lifting and shifting, but we've taken what we can and put it into the cloud under one roof with one orchestration engine under one umbrella. So that now gives us a lot of new opportunities to really dig in and find efficiencies and be more focused on automation, more focused on new opportunities to share data, to streamline data, to make the data tell us the story of where we need to focus. Previously, with all these different things happening in all these different systems, it was tough to know where are the bottlenecks, where do we need to focus on, where is it tending to take the longest, and break that down by different types of content, different types of distribution. Now, we're very early with this, but now that we all have this single platform with this single set of data feeding in and telling us information about our supply chain every day, we're able to start to dig in and find those things, find those bottlenecks, find those efficiencies, and really make some new and interesting things happen. I think there are a lot of legs left in that idea. It was a big effort, a 5-year effort to get all of these processes moved to the cloud. Now that they're there, I still think there is a tremendous amount of opportunity to go further and make them more efficient, make them easier, involve people more. And AI is certainly a part of that. I can't not talk about AI. It's just it's what we have to do. It's a thing. So AI is certainly part of that. For the supply chain focus, I think the AI is much more about automation. It's much more about streamlining processes. To some extent, it's about using some AI tools that we're hopeful will start giving us good time-based metadata for like where commercial breaks should go and where do things need to be edited for language or nudity or violence. We're early stages, I think. Some of those things already work. Some of them work with some caveats, and there's some things that I think will continue to grow. So that automation side, I think we have a lot to do on. And then, of course, we could talk about Gen AI and the creative tools. I mean, there's a lot to talk about there.
I'm curious what you're doing in that phase. Maybe it's something you want to share with the folks. Probably, I know you've been playing with, working with different tools now for the last 18 months. So, is anything that stand out that that it's helping to make a difference for the business and adding business value?
Yeah. I think it's still very early, but I think there are a lot of things that are starting to show a lot of promise and starting to add some value. We recently brought in a AI video editing assistant. I think Mike is here for Gio from our studios group, who was, I think, the original one to find this AI editing assistant. Great little tool, helps you go through the raw footage, look through a interview, talk about sound bites that you're looking for, and chat with it. And it'll actually pull out for you the sound bites of somebody talking about their childhood, or the sound bites of somebody talking about their dog. Early days on that type of stuff, like that is still part of enabling the human to work better, be more efficient, be faster, and have new capabilities that you might not otherwise have had. We have a few other tools like that that I think are really helping streamline some of those processes and trying to make it easier for all of us. Of course, the Adobe tool set you can't overlook, from the creative standpoint. The things that are in Adobe, the things they're starting to let you do with Gen AI, very impressive. And there's, a whole litany of tools with short names and acronyms and things that we don't have to go into at the moment. So some of that stuff is definitely coming in the creative space. We're very cautious, and we're working to make sure we have an approach that makes sense for that stuff, particularly as a factual company. We want to make sure people understand what we're putting on is actual real content. So we're very cautious, but I think there are some tools there that, like that editing assistant, help enable the editor to work a little faster and better. And I think we're really going to see stuff on the technology side of the business too, like a lot of what supply chain is writing code. A lot of what our engineering team does is write code and figure out not only how to automate something, but how to give somebody a clean image of what they're going to get, so that when it's delivered, it's something that really makes sense and we're delivering value very quickly. So I think in the coding space, like I don't code as much as I used to, but when I do, I have GitHub Copilot open, and I'm getting feedback, and I'm saving time from going to Google to look up the things that I used to go look up.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of improvements there. And we've even seen some people on the team taking ideas, putting them into chatbots, and coming back with mocked up initial user interfaces and prototypes. That kind of quick feedback and quick return on value, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I think that's, even though it's just technology, it's just coding, the supply chain space is really all about that agility, responding to the market quickly, delivering value quickly. So those tools that help us write code faster and give people better perspectives on what's being developed, they're a big win. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up.
Awesome. Just about 7 minutes left. So I was curious about lessons learned that you can share with the group. I know you've shared with us a lot about the last 5 years, but if there's any lessons learned maybe we didn't go over here that stick with you, that resonate with you, and then maybe that you're still building from and learning from.
Sure. I might even have a slide on this topic to talk about. It's entirely possible. We'll see. I do. Wow. So funny thing is, these 3 takeaways, this slide is actually exactly what I put on the screen in 2022 when we talked on reInvent. So, not to pull one over on you, I want to be honest about that. But I really think this editing project in particular has validated a lot of these ideas and has shown us that these are some really key principles to keep in mind. So I still say this is my big advice and what I tend to offer up to people when they ask me. So I've talked a lot about lifting and shifting, that you really want to rethink your workflows when you move to the cloud. It's not just take what you did and move it up. It's rethink it, rebuild it, re-engineer it, and take advantage of all the things the cloud gives you. Otherwise, you're not going to see the full advantage of the cloud, and it's just going to feel like the same old thing, and it's not great. Metadata is fuel. So this is one of my favorite sayings about supply chain work in general, but I always tell people I wish we focused more on metadata earlier in our work, and I think that's true for the editing project as well. So much of what we do in the supply chain is take metadata and transform it and add some new stuff because we need to know where this event happens and where to put in this graphic and where to put in the commercial break. what the audio tracks are. All this information is metadata about these assets. And that metadata, when accurate, is the fuel that drives all that automation. It's the fuel that makes the chart continue to go up and to the right. Without that, you can't make the chart go up and to the right. The metadata really is the thing that makes that happen. And the last thing I'll say, which is really just a key supply chain principle in my mind, is focusing on flow over function, where what I think we've really seen as we've built out across the whole chain, that you get a bigger bang for your buck focusing on how does content move between the steps rather than focusing on each individual step itself and making each step as perfect as possible. Because the flow between the steps, about how the media moves from one place to another, how metadata flows from one person's timeline to the next, how it comes in from a supplier and automatically populates the right way that it should for a technician. Those things really add a lot of efficiency to your overall chain. Those things are the key to really making your chain flow effectively, and again, helping the chart go up and to the right. And it's a little counterintuitive, I think, because in something like this, where you might think of, how do I make my ingest process as efficient as possible? How do I make my quality control process as efficient as possible, and so on? Though it's important to think about how to do those processes right. It was important to think about how to do our editing project well and remove the steps that weren't needed anymore and do things more efficiently. But it was, I think, more important to focus on how is data coming into the process? How does data move out? That is how we're able to really build a consistent supply chain process and get the momentum we need so that things come in and flow across, rather than coming in and kind of getting blocked and stopped and then having to get something to pick it back up and go. But focusing on the flow, I think, is really that key point.
Excellent. So thank you for sharing your journey with us. We look forward to the next 5 years working together. I want to thank Tanya McKee, who put us together, your account manager, who also put the bar right next to us here, which was a great move by you, Tanya. Thank you. Always nice feature. But thank you, folks. We'll be around to answer any questions if you like. David, thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.